There is a moment, and if you are watching this, you have already lived it, when you look around at the world and realize quietly but unmistakably that you do not fit, not because you are broken, not because you are damaged, but because you are calibrated to a frequency that most people have never even heard of. You think in layers when the world demands straight lines. You feel things at a depth that frightens people who only know shallow water. You see connections where others see randomness, and you sense meaning in places the untrained eye walks right past. This is not arrogance, this is recognition. And recognition is the first act of awakening. The chosen one is not a title handed to you from the heavens in a moment of thunder and light. It is a remembering, a slow, sacred recollection of what you always were before the world told you to be something smaller. Before the teachers asked you to sit still. Before the family dinners where your ideas were met with silence. Before the friends who could not understand why you stayed up until 3 a.m. turning a single question over in your mind like a stone that might reveal gold underneath. You were always this. You were always built differently. And the world, for all its noise and certainty, has never quite been able to keep up with you. Not because it hasn't tried, but because it gave up. Think about the nature of a mind that refuses to settle. Most people, when they encounter a difficult question, find the nearest acceptable answer and park there. They pull into the first available space and call it a destination. But you keep driving. You are not satisfied with the parking lot version of truth. You want the source. You want to know not just what is happening, but why it is happening and what it means and what it is connected to. And what it was before it became what it is now, and what it might become if conditions changed. This is not restlessness in the anxious sense, though it can feel that way. This is the burning of a consciousness that was designed for depth. The philosopher Socrates was considered the wisest man in Athens, not because he had all the answers, but because he was the only one who truly understood the weight of the questions. He made people uncomfortable, not through cruelty, but through clarity. He held up a mirror to the certainty of others, and in the reflection they saw how little they actually knew. They did not celebrate him for this, they sentenced him to death, and yet 2,500 years later we still speak his name. This is the paradox of the chosen one, to be most threatening to the world in the moment you are most alive within yourself. The world does not punish what it doesn't notice, it punishes what it cannot contain. Let us talk about loneliness, because if you are this kind of person, you know it intimately, not the loneliness of being without people. You may have many people around you, but the loneliness of being without mirrors. The loneliness of speaking your truth and watching it land on faces that don't quite know what to do with it. The loneliness of being in a room full of laughter and still feeling like you are watching it through glass. This loneliness is not a wound. It is a signature. It is the mark left on a soul that vibrates at a different frequency than the standard broadcast. Nikola Tesla, a man whose mind restructured the entire electrical infrastructure of the modern world, lived and died largely misunderstood. He worked in rooms alone. He slept barely 4 hours. He dreamed in blueprints. The world celebrated Edison, the businessman, the pragmatist, the man who knew how to sell the light. But Tesla was the one who understood the deeper nature of electricity itself. He gave the world alternating current, radio waves, the fundamental principles that power nearly every device you are using to watch this video right now. And he died nearly penniless in a hotel room with pigeons as his closest companions. The world did not match him. The world could not. But the world runs on what he built. Your loneliness is not evidence of your failure. It is evidence of your magnitude. There is a spiritual principle that runs through almost every wisdom tradition on earth. And it goes something like this. The vessel must be strong enough to hold what it is given to carry. A ceramic cup cannot hold what a steel barrel can. A river with shallow banks cannot carry the volume of a deep canyon. When you are being formed, whether you understand that formation as God, as the universe, as genetics, as the accumulation of 1,000 lifetimes, or simply as the mysterious alchemy of consciousness meeting circumstance. You were given a container of unusual size. You were given a mind with unusual capacity. You were given a heart with unusual range. And with that comes unusual pressure. Because more capacity means more is poured into you. More range means you feel the full spectrum. The highs that leave you breathless and the lows that leave you hollow. The chosen one does not live a comfortable life. Comfort is not the point. The point is expansion. The point is transmission. The point is that something enormous is moving through you, and the tension you feel in your daily life is the tension of a vessel being stretched to hold what it was always meant to carry. This is not punishment, this is preparation. Every compression is calibration. Every breakdown is renovation. Every time the world has made you feel too much, too intense, too strange, it was the universe stress testing the infrastructure of someone it intends to use at full capacity. Now let us be honest about something that most spiritual content refuses to address. Because it is uncomfortable, and because discomfort does not generate as many views as validation. Being chosen is not the same as being protected. It is not a guarantee of ease. It is not a cosmic insurance policy against suffering. In fact, the opposite tends to be true. The people who are chosen, the ones who carry a genuine mission, who are built to shift something real in the fabric of human experience, they tend to walk through fire, not metaphorical fire. Real loss, real betrayal, real periods of confusion so total that they cannot see one foot in front of the other. Moses spent 40 years in the desert before he walked toward Pharaoh. Joseph was thrown into a pit by his own brothers before he became the architect of Egypt's salvation. The Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree and was assaulted by every fear and desire his mind could generate before the moment of liberation arrived. Joan of Arc led an army and then burned for it. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke the dream and then was silenced for it. The pattern is not arbitrary. The pattern is, depth is earned, clarity is forged in confusion. The chosen one is not someone who escaped the fire. The chosen one is someone who became, in the fire, something the fire could not consume. You may be at a point in your life right now where things do not look like destiny. They look like delay. They look like failure. They look like evidence that perhaps you were wrong about yourself, that the feeling of being built for something was just a story you told yourself to feel better about not fitting in. I want to speak directly to that version of you, the one sitting in the middle of the gap between who you know yourself to be and what your life currently looks like. The gap is not a sign that you were wrong. The gap is the training ground. Consider the oak tree. When you plant an acorn, for a long time, far longer than is comfortable, nothing appears to be happening. The soil sits still. The surface is unchanged. But underneath the ground, something extraordinary is unfolding. The root system is establishing itself. The root system that will eventually allow this tree to stand against storms that would flatten anything with a shallow foundation. The invisible phase is not the absence of progress. It is the most critical phase of the entire process. What you are doing right now, in the unseen chapters of your becoming, is building the roots. The part of you that no one sees, the part that is being quietly fortified in the dark, that is the part that will hold you upright when the winds come. And the winds will come. They always do, but you will not fall. Let us talk about perception, specifically the gap between how the world perceives you and what you actually are. One of the most disorienting aspects of being a chosen one is that the external and the internal rarely match up, especially in the early stages. Inside, you may carry a sense of enormous purpose, enormous potential, enormous knowing. And outside, you are looking at an apartment that needs cleaning, a job that feels meaningless, a bank account that doesn't match the magnitude of your vision. This gap can feel like evidence of delusion, like maybe the inner sense is just inflation, just ego, just a pretty lie you tell yourself. But consider this, every master was once a beginner, every cathedral was once a blueprint, every symphony was once silence. The gap between the inner and the outer is not a disqualification. It is simply the current state of a process that has not yet completed. The caterpillar inside the chrysalis doesn't look like a butterfly. In fact, at the moment of deepest transformation, it doesn't look like anything recognizable at all. The contents of the chrysalis become, briefly, entirely liquid, a kind of organic soup with no apparent form. The butterfly does not emerge from something that already looks like a butterfly. It emerges from something that has completely surrendered its previous form. And that willingness to become unrecognizable in the middle of the process, that courage to not look like your destiny before you arrive at it, that is perhaps the most powerful thing you can practice. There is a war being waged, and it is not between people, nations, or ideologies. It is a war over the nature of human consciousness itself. On one side is contraction, the force that tells you to make yourself smaller, to need less, to ask fewer questions, to fit, to comply, to consume, to stay distracted, to mistake motion for meaning and noise for truth. On the other side is expansion, the force that calls you to think more deeply, to feel more fully, to question more rigorously, to create more courageously, to love more completely, to live in a way that is actually commensurate with the depth of your awareness. The chosen one is someone who, consciously or not, has chosen the side of expansion. And this is not a comfortable choice. The world is heavily incentivized toward contraction. The systems, the algorithms, the economies, the social structures, they are all optimized for a population that stays manageable, predictable, and distracted. The person who wakes up, who begins to see through the architecture of distraction, who starts to ask questions that the system cannot easily answer, that person is a disruption. And disruptions initially are never popular. But disruptions are how systems grow. Disruptions are how humanity evolves. You are not a disruption in the sense of chaos. You are a disruption in the sense of an upgrade that the current version of the world does not yet know it needs. Let us speak about gifts and the specific strange burden of carrying a gift that the world has not yet learned to receive. Gifts of insight, gifts of vision, gifts of empathy, gifts of artistic genius, gifts of spiritual sensitivity, gifts of intellectual depth. These are not accessories to a life, they are functions. They are specific capacities that exist because the universe needed someone to perform a specific function that could not be performed without them. But here is the thing about gifts. They do not come with instruction manuals. They do not come with social support structures. They do not come with a community that immediately recognizes and celebrates them. They come wrapped in confusion, wrapped in the ache of not knowing what to do with what you carry, wrapped in the trial and error of learning how to wield something that has no precedent in your immediate surroundings. Every person who was ever deeply gifted in something first went through a period of feeling cursed by it. The musician who cannot turn the music off inside their head at 3 in the morning. The empath who walks into a room and is immediately flooded with the emotional weather of everyone in it, with no filter, no off switch, no way to know where they end and others begin. The visionary who can see so clearly where things are going that they cannot understand why nobody else is moving. The gift and the curse are the same thing at different stages of mastery. Your gift has not yet become your gift. It is still in the process of becoming. And that process requires patience and commitment and radical self-acceptance and above all, the willingness to keep going even when it feels like the gift is eating you alive. There is a concept in Japanese culture called ikigai, a word that translates roughly as reason for being, the thing at the center of your existence, the intersection of what you love, what you are good at, what the world needs, and what you can be sustained by. But before you find your ikigai, before you reach that intersection, there is almost always a period of wandering. There is a period of trying things that almost fit but don't quite. Trying on identities that look right from the outside but feel wrong on the inside. Taking paths that make sense to everyone around you and feeling, with each step, like you are walking in the wrong direction. This wandering is not failure. This wandering is necessary cartography. You are mapping the territory of your own soul, and you cannot map it without walking it. Every wrong turn teaches you something that the right turn would never have revealed. Every dead end clarifies. Every time you arrive somewhere that isn't home, you learn more about what home actually is. The chosen one is not someone who found their path immediately and walked it in a straight line. The chosen one is someone who could not stop searching, who had enough fire in them to keep looking when the easier thing would have been to stop, to settle, to call the nearest available space a destination. The wandering is the path, the searching is the practice. The not yet knowing is the threshold, and you are standing right on it. We must address fear, because fear is the most consistent companion of the chosen one, and it is also the most misunderstood. We are taught to see fear as evidence of weakness, as a sign that we should stop, as a disqualification from the thing we are moving toward. But look at what fear actually is. It is the signal that something matters. You cannot feel fear about something that is irrelevant to you. Fear is attention. Fear is the nervous system saying, this is real, this counts, this is connected to something that actually means something to you. The person who feels no fear is not brave. The person who feels no fear is not sufficiently invested in anything. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the recognition that something on the other side of the fear is more important than the comfort of avoiding it. The chosen one feels fear constantly and moves anyway. Not because the fear goes away, but because the mission becomes larger than the fear. Because the thing you are carrying, the thing you are here to give, the thing that the world is waiting for, it is heavier than your hesitation. It pulls you forward even when your legs want to stop. This is not superhuman. This is what happens when you are truly aligned with your purpose. The purpose has weight. The purpose has gravity. And that gravity will pull you through the fear if you let it. Now I want to talk to you about the people who didn't make it, not in the sense of death, although some of them did not survive their gifts. I want to talk about the ones who were chosen and didn't choose back, who were called and hung up the phone, who felt the pull of their own depth and were too afraid to dive, who stood at the threshold of their becoming and flinched at the last moment, retreated to safety, built a life that looked acceptable from the outside and felt like slow suffocation from the inside. I am not saying this to judge them. I am saying this because you need to understand what is at stake in the choices you make right now. The universe does not withhold its call when you refuse to answer, but it does move on. It finds another vessel. It identifies another point in the web of consciousness where the signal can be transmitted, and it shifts its investment there. The window of your specific unrepeatable version of the mission. That window is real, and it does not stay open indefinitely. Not because the universe is cruel, because the universe is efficient, because the world is moving and it needs what it needs when it needs it, and there is a timing to everything that is not arbitrary. You may have already let some windows close. Most people have. That is not the point. The point is, there are windows open right now. Right now, in this moment, in this chapter of your life. There are possibilities available to you that will not always be available. The question is not whether you were chosen. The question is whether you choose today to move. Let us speak about mastery, because the chosen one is ultimately someone who commits to mastery. Not the mastery of appearing impressive, not the mastery of accumulating credentials or applause, but the mastery of becoming the fullest possible expression of what you are. This kind of mastery is not a destination, it is a daily practice. It is the decision made fresh every morning to bring the full weight of your awareness to whatever is in front of you. It is the willingness to do the unglamorous work, the practice, the study, the failure, the iteration, the long plateaus where it seems like nothing is improving, and then the sudden leap that makes the plateau retrospectively make sense. Mastery is not compatible with the modern appetite for instant results. In a world of overnight success stories and viral moments and algorithmic shortcuts, mastery is a radical act. It is the declaration that you are in this for the long game, that you are building something real, something deep, something that will still be standing when the trends have shifted and the shortcuts have collapsed. The people who have truly changed the world, not just disrupted the market or trended on social media, but actually structurally changed how humanity thinks or feels or relates to itself. They were almost universally people who were in it for the long game. They were people who would have done what they did even if nobody was watching, because they were not doing it for the audience. They were doing it because it was the only honest expression of who they were. Here is something the self-help industry almost never tells you. You do not need to fix yourself before you begin. You do not need to heal all your wounds before you step into your mission. You do not need to achieve perfect clarity, perfect confidence, perfect readiness. The waiting for readiness is, in most cases, a sophisticated form of hiding. The most powerful thing you can do, the thing that will generate more growth, more healing, more clarity than any amount of preparation, is to begin, to take the first available step toward the thing you are here to do, imperfectly, incompletely, with shaking hands and a mind full of doubt. Because action is the teacher, movement is the clarifier. You cannot think your way to purpose, you can only act your way there. The doubts do not go away when you think about them enough. They go away, or more accurately, they become irrelevant when you are too busy doing your work to give them the attention they require. The chosen one is not someone who waited until they were fully formed. The chosen one is someone who chose to step into the arena even while still being shaped. The shaping happened in the stepping. The becoming happened in the doing. You are not behind. You are not too late. You are not too broken or too confused or too anything. You are exactly where the process requires you to be, and the process requires you to move. I want to talk about legacy, not in the sense of monuments and obituaries, but in the deeper sense of what you leave in the field of consciousness. Every encounter you have is a transmission. Every conversation, every piece of work you create, every moment of genuine presence you bring to another human being. These are deposits into a ledger that is not visible but is absolutely real. The chosen one understands at some level that they are part of a chain, that what they carry was carried by others before them, refined and passed on, and that what they do with it will be carried by others after them, refined and passed on. You are not the beginning of the line. You received something from the ones who came before, from the thinkers and creators and seekers and builders and lovers of truth who, often in conditions of great difficulty, chose to transmit rather than consume, to give rather than take, to expand rather than contract. You owe them not gratitude alone, but continuation. You owe them the willingness to take what they passed on and go one step further, one level deeper, one shade more fully into the truth, and then to pass it on. This is the sacred economy of consciousness. Nothing is ever truly lost when it is genuinely transmitted. The light that enters a prism does not disappear, it changes, it expands. It reveals a spectrum that was always present within the white light, but could not be seen until it passed through something that was designed to refract it. You are that prism. You are the medium through which something enormous and invisible becomes visible, becomes specific, becomes something that can actually be received by the world. There are people in your life right now who do not understand you, who find your intensity confusing, your depth unsettling, your refusal to settle uncomfortable. And it is possible, it is even likely, that some of them love you genuinely and still cannot match your frequency. This is one of the lonelier truths of this particular path. Love and understanding are not the same thing. You can be deeply loved and still be profoundly alone in your knowing. And the temptation, the beautiful, understandable, entirely human temptation, is to flatten yourself, to turn down the volume of your own frequency so that the people you love can hear you more easily, to make yourself smaller so that the relationship fits, to trade authenticity for belonging. And I understand this temptation with my whole heart. The desire to be met, to be known, to rest inside the experience of being fully seen by another person, this is not weakness. This is one of the most fundamental human needs, but here is the truth. You cannot be truly met if you are not truly present. If you have dimmed yourself, hidden yourself, compressed yourself into a smaller version so that the space feels more comfortable, then whoever is meeting you is meeting the compression, not the real thing. The people who are meant for you, the ones who will truly receive what you are, they need you to be fully what you are in order to find you. Your fullness is your signal, and if you dim the signal, the right receivers cannot locate you. The universe has a design, and if you pay attention to your own life, not to the surface events, but to the deeper patterns, the recurring themes, the things that keep showing up in different costumes, you will begin to see it. There are no coincidences at the level of soul. There are only unrecognized instructions, the book that fell off the shelf at the right moment, the conversation with a stranger that answered the question you hadn't even fully articulated yet, the failure that redirected you towards something you never would have chosen and that turned out to be exactly right, the door that closed, the one that felt like devastation, that forced you down a hallway you never would have walked and toward a room that contained your actual life. These are not accidents, these are the universe's syntax. This is how it communicates with a consciousness that is too limited, in its ordinary state, to see the full architecture of its own becoming. The chosen one develops over time a fluency in this language, a trust in the strange grammar of their own life, an ability to sit inside an apparent disaster and say, not with denial but with genuine conviction, I do not yet understand this chapter, but I trust the author. And every chapter I have misunderstood so far has eventually revealed its meaning. Every apparent ending has eventually revealed itself as a threshold. Every darkness has eventually revealed a depth that the light never could. Let us talk finally about what it means to actually step into this, not as a concept, not as an idea you entertain during a motivated moment and then set aside when the morning alarm goes off, but as a lived practice, a daily orientation, a way of being in the world that is specific and concrete and actionable. Because the chosen one is not someone who thinks beautiful thoughts about their potential. The chosen one is someone who acts, who shows up, who does the work, who sits down at the page or the instrument or the problem or the relationship when they do not feel inspired and stays there until the act of showing up generates its own inspiration. Who chooses each day the more difficult path, not because difficulty is virtuous in itself, but because the more difficult path is the one that is pointing towards something real. What does this look like practically? It looks like protecting your mind from the noise that would dilute it. It looks like creating space daily for the quieter voice inside you to be heard, the voice that the loud world spends enormous energy trying to drown out. It looks like making choices that are aligned with what you actually value rather than what you think will impress the people around you. It looks like honest work on the things that genuinely matter to you, pursued with discipline and patience and the willingness to be imperfect for as long as it takes to become excellent. It looks like choosing, again and again, the expansion over the contraction, the depth over the surface, the authentic over the acceptable. This is not dramatic. It does not look like a movie, but it compounds, it accumulates, and over time it becomes something unmistakable. You were not born to be ordinary, not because ordinary is wrong. Ordinary is the water that most of life swims in, and there is dignity and beauty in an ordinary life well lived. But you were not configured for ordinary. Your system was built for something else. Something that requires the full engagement of what you actually are. Not a managed, moderated, socially acceptable version of it, but the real thing. The unedited, undiminished, full-frequency version of the consciousness that you are. The world has tried to match this and has found it cannot. The world's default settings are not calibrated for someone like you. The world's social scripts, its career ladders, its relationship templates, its definitions of success, they were written with someone else in mind. And the fact that they don't fit you is not a flaw in you, it is information. It is the world telling you, by the persistent failure of its categories to contain you, that you were not designed to be contained, you were designed to expand. You were designed to push the edge of what is currently possible in the domain you were built for. You were designed to look back at the people who come after you and leave them something they can stand on. This is your function. This is your purpose, not as an ego elevation, not as a crown you wear over others, but as a calling you answer in service of something larger than yourself. The crown of the chosen one is not gold. It is made of responsibility and service, and the willingness to carry what is asked of you even when you cannot fully see why or where it leads. So here, at the end of this transmission, is what I want you to take with you, not as words, but as a lived practice. The world has given up trying to match your mind. Let it. You were never competing with the world's ceiling. You were always reaching for something higher. The loneliness you have felt is not evidence of rejection. It is evidence of your specific frequency, and the right resonances are still finding you. The confusion is not a dead end. It is the threshold of a clarity that is still forming. The fire you have walked through has not diminished you. It has made you something the fire cannot touch. The delay is not denial, it is preparation. The gap between who you are and what your life currently shows is not a verdict. It is a work in progress, and the work requires your presence. Your full presence, not the presence of the person you think you're supposed to be, but the presence of who you actually are in this moment, in this body, with this mind, with these specific gifts and wounds and questions and capabilities. All of it, nothing held back, nothing apologized for, nothing dimmed in deference to a world that has simply not yet developed the eyes to see what it has in you. You are the chosen one, not because the universe has placed you above others, but because you have been given a specific mission that only you can carry in the specific way that you can carry it. And the world, which has indeed given up trying to match it, is waiting for you to stop waiting and simply begin. Begin now. Begin here. Begin as you are. The rest will follow. It always has. It always will.